I'd like to thank ILAB for this invitation for joining you today. And I'm talking to you as a representative of the French administration, so I feel I might be the bad guy of the panel, but also as a scholar and as a librarian. And I wanted to say that this background is very important for me to deal with my daily job of delivering export licenses, because it helps me answering two questions I have to deal with. The first one is what? What is the document? What is exactly the document we have to deliver license export, an export license? And second, why? Why could this document be or not be a national treasure and so stay on the national territory? So I prepared this presentation to show you how we deal with these export licenses inside the administration, because Mario made this very bad description of the situation in Italy, and I don't know exactly how things are going in Italy, but in France we're trying our best to make things go as fast as possible with our limitation of people. We have, as we will see, very few people dealing with this, and it's a lot of requests to deal every day with. So, in the first point, I'll explain you the recent evolutions of the French and European regulations. In the second point, I'll present you the activity of my department. And on the third point, I'll explain you the relations we have for quite a long years now with the French antiquarian booksellers, and more precisely the SLAM. So sorry for the French book dealers who are in the room, because they already know all this, but I found it interesting for other booksellers to know how things go in France. So our Bible about control of cultural goods circulation is the French Code du Patrimoine. It's our cultural heritage code, and I give you the precise references to the articles dealing with the control of international movements. There's been a recent change in this code with a decree of 2020. We have fixed new and higher values for some of the cultural goods we have to deal with. And these new values started to be applied on January 1st, 2021. I also want to say, and it's important to have in mind, that my department is concerned not only with printed books, manuscripts, but also with coins and medals, engravings, photographs, maps. And you can imagine a lot of specificities of documents we have to deal with. These documents, these categories of documents have some numbers in the European and French regulation. There are 15 categories, and I will mention you the categories which concern us today. So you can read category 1B and 1C, that are archaeological objects and coins. Category 6, engravings and prints. Category 8, photographs, films and negatives. The two main categories which interest us today are category 9 and 10. The first one for incunabula and manuscripts, and the 10 for printed books. So as in Italy, we have two criteria. No, there's one that we share with Italy, that is a question of age of the document. And this criteria come directly from the European regulation. And we have a second one, that is the value of the document. And as you can see, there have been quite important changes of these values in 2021. Most of them have been doubled for two reasons. The first one is that, as you know, on the market, we have this movement of prices increasing since last decades. And the second, for a more specifically French situation, that is linked with the Aristophil affair. You probably heard about this, which brought to my service a lot of requests of export licenses for these manuscripts, and we couldn't deal with so many requests, so we in accordance with SLAM, we discussed these values also with SLAM, we decided to make them up. So, for the cultural goods who respond to this criteria, a request of certificate has to be done to the French Ministry of Culture to leave the French territory. So that's what you call the certificate. The certificate in French, it's what I would call in English a national license. So the Code du patrimoine says that the delivery of this export certificate must be done within 4 months. So it's longer than in Italy. But I will explain you on the next slide why it takes so long time. Actually, it's a paper process, so it's quite complicated. It was more complicated during the COVID period with the problems of mail we had in France. We lost some mails, etc. But we're now working on a process to digitalize the process entirely, from the user, from you, at the beginning to make the request online, since the delivery on the passport of the license. And we hope that this process could be available and functional at the end of 2023. So it's very soon now. So I inserted a link to our website. I don't know if I have. I'm trying to click on the link, but there's a pointer.
Is it actually a link?
It doesn't seem. Oh, yes. I have the right screen on the computer, but I don't have it on the screen. Is it possible to switch? Or if not, it doesn't matter. It was just to show you the formula.
Website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I will need your help afterwards to come back to the. I think I will need. Yes, please. So, can I? Yeah. Okay. Sorry for this technical. I want to go down.
Close in the top corner.
So here you have. So you can already find the formula online, but you cannot fill it in online yet. But I hope in 2023 it will be possible. So here you have the formula. So the problem is that this formula is common to every category of cultural goods dealt with the Ministry of Culture: paintings, sculptures, drawings, and so it had to be quite general for entering the information of every kind of cultural good, but it's not really adapted for the specificities of books and manuscripts. So you have first, sorry for the French text, but the number of the category, and several times the booksellers are wrong with the number of the category, so it means that the form goes to the bad service, and then it has to come to be resent to us. So it can be a cause of loss of time sometimes. Dénomination du bien means a kind of good, the title, or if it's yes, a manuscript autograph, or yes, this kind of stuff. So then you have the title, the author, or attribution, the date, the dimensions, what kind of material, all the references you have about catalogs, inventories, and yes, every kind of bibliography about the document. Antécédent historique covers all the history and mostly the provenance of the item. The state of conservation, particular mention, signature, inscriptions, bindings, and number 14 here, the value of the document. So you see it's very short, so we also ask pictures, but it's very short, and it's sometimes very difficult to judge of the pertinence for requests with this very small formula. So that's why we're working on a new one. May I go back to the, yeah. Okay. So sorry, because I'm short with time, so I will go quickly with the EU regulation. So the regulation of 2008 about exportation. So our service, my service, is concerned with the certificates, the national licenses, but also the European licenses. So it means that for one document that has to be exported outside from the EU, you need two documents. You need first the export certificate, what I call the national license for leaving France, and then the export license for leaving the EU. So here you have the categories for the EU regulations. I also mentioned the new regulation from 2018 concerning this time the import of cultural goods in the EU. And just to let you know that this regulation doesn't require an import license to the cultural goods we have to deal with, but when the value of these items are over 18,000 euros, you need to fill in an important statement that will be required. So it will be a simple declaration and a description of the cultural good concerned. And this is also valid for the goods that will be temporarily imported in the EU for European fairs, for instance. So I'm now talking about the activity of my department because I wanted you to have an idea of the volume of requests we have every year. So in 2021, we have to deal with more than 2,000 requests, so it's a big amount. You can see the repartition between manuscripts in inculabula that are not exactly the half of it, but almost, sorry. Yes, and then the second category is coins and medals and not books. Books comes quite far after that. I also have statistics about the identity of the users asking for these licenses. So you can see that the half of it are the auction houses and the booksellers, 960. And trust fund company, it's not like in the US, not so many, it's a very small proportion of the total. So about the time, I mentioned these 4 months of instructions that can seem quite long for you and for your customers, but for your clients, but very often we have to ask for completion of the indication of the information that are mentioned in the forms. Then we usually transmit this request for information to either the special collections departments of the National Library, either to other specific specialized libraries in Paris, because we very often ask for a scientific report about the document that has to be exported. And so I mentioned the case when we can refuse the export certificates. There are 2 cases. The first one is a case when there's a proof of public property of this document, and then we get in a new process of restitution, so claim for restitution of this. And the second case, that is very rare, it's 3 cases at maximum a year, concerns the national treasure That is when we consider that the cultural good that is going to be exported has to stay in France because it belongs to the national patrimony, the national heritage. So I gave you the statistics about the certificates, so our national licenses, so to leave France. So to leave EU, as you see, there are much less, only a third of the total I mentioned before. That means that the most of these exportations are done inside the EU. And outside the EU, so we have our top four. So first to the United States, to Switzerland, United Kingdom, and Japan. So I wanted to insist on the importance of the informations of provenance, because too often these informations are lacking or very deficient in the forms we receive. And they're important for several reasons. The first one is, of course, the fight against illicit trafficking. The second is the research and identification of cultural goods that could have been spoliated during World War II. And the third one is a claim for restitution of cultural goods belonging to the public domain. So I remind you the two moments in the French history where we had a big increasing of our public collections. So the first one is the French Revolution, of course, and the second one that maybe you don't have in mind is the law of separation between the state and the church in 1905. And at this moment, the cultural goods that were still belonging to the church became to enter the public collection, the state collection. So I also inserted, but it's too short, I don't have time, some links that you can consult afterwards to the resources public libraries are trying to build on provenance, and it's important to mention them on a national level first, but also on a European level with the work done by the Consortium of European Research Libraries, CERL. I don't know if you heard about it, but they're doing a great job on provenances. Now about the relations between the French administration and the market and the French booksellers. I wanted to mention that besides the process of request of export certificates and licenses, we also have many occasions of dealing with booksellers. The first one is the acquisition projects we can have for public libraries, because my department also supports acquisition public libraries can make. And the second one is the fact that there's a representative of the French antiquarian booksellers inside the French Committee for National Treasures. So booksellers are also invited to give an advice about the decision to make or no a document a national treasure. And more rarely, we also are in relation with booksellers about claims of cultural goods we have found on the market. So about this question of claim for restitution, it could have been a subject of tension between the booksellers and I would say more the service of archive about the public archives in the last year. I remind you that the Code du Patrimoine insists on their inalienability and imprescriptibility. Also remind you that this document issued from the French Revolution or the confiscation of 1905 belong to the state and not to the city. Even if they're kept today in the city public libraries, they still belong to the state, to the nation. Remind you also that these claims can concern documents on sale in France, but also abroad. I'll give you an example of a document that was on sale in London in 2021, and that was returned by the bookseller to the Public Library of Le Mans. I also mentioned the good relations we have with the French Syndicat de la Librairie Ancienne et Moderne. I think I can say, and Anne can probably testify, that they are long and good ones. And I wanted to mention that my service is actually invested in the support of the annual Salon du Livre Rare. And we have a double page in the brochure of the Salon to present the action of the ministry to support the acquisitions of the French public libraries. Suggestion for the future? Yes, I insisted on the importance of provenances. And we already have some discussions with Anne about it. I think it would be very interesting, at least for the French situation, to have kind of guidelines for the booksellers to know how to deal with these questions, as some auction houses already did. I made a link to what Christie's did. Thank you. Sorry for my time.
Thank you very much.